So in part 1, I broke down everything leading up to this. The dice, the cards, the whole system. But this section right here is the talent frame. If your sports graphic talents and athletes don't seem to pop, you're gonna wanna stay and watch this video. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly how I built this, how I'm treating athlete images, how I'm building depth, how I'm building scenes and typography, and how it all transitions into the matchup. Let's go ahead and get into the breakdown. Alright, so each wrestler has their own system. I didn't just randomly choose these colors. Brock is that gold-orange palette and Roman is that icy blue. This is based on their actual presence inside the WWE and their brand. Keep in mind, this is a matchup made in 2023 based on a 2022 matchup. So any WWE fans in the comments, don't come for me. That, I believe, was the time frame. This is built as a system, and you can swap any wrestler in and change the colors. The whole thing still works. So let's go ahead and hop into how this actually works. But before we do that, go ahead and visit motiondirective.com/shop and get yourself a motion hat if you have motion. So if you don't, maybe after this video, you might need to go because you'll have so much motion after this video that all right. We'll get into it now. All right, as you can see, we have the section pulled up that we're going to be talking about today and breaking down. This is the matchup and the transition into the next scene. So as you can see, we have Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. We're going to go ahead and talk about the solo talent frames first. Then we're going to talk about the actual matchup and the transition out. Once again, if you haven't checked out the first part of this video, obviously go check out part 1. This covers these first 2 shots very in depth. Brace yourself because we hop into Cinema 4D and After Effects for these shots. Now hopping into the first talent frame, we have Roman Reigns here. The most important thing here is the actual talent imagery. So let's go ahead and solo that and talk about that first. It's important to note that when I got this photo, this is what it originally looked like. So you can quickly see that from the online photo that I got, yes, it's high quality, but is it really giving the fierce look that we want? I wanted a grittier look. I wanted to not lose quality, just black and white it and call it grittier, or add texture and call it grittier. I wanted to actually pull out more detail and make it feel grittier. So I'm going to show you this exact secret stack that I use that a lot of people gatekeep, but it is an industry pro tip that people use at the highest level of sports graphics. Now let's get that ugly online photo out of here. Now the key is this first layer being black and white. Now you're going to want to have this middle layer. This bottom one is actually a drop shadow layer, so you can clearly just see it's just a fill, so we won't really have to talk about that. The important thing is that this first layer is using the black and white effect on After Effects. Now you can go ahead and actually fine tune certain values to be more grittier than others. Obviously, as you can see, that will kind of play into the effect that we get when we start stacking. But the thing to keep in mind is the effect happens once we stack another layer with a extremely saturated version on top with an overlay blend mode. So essentially, as you can see right here, that's where we get all of the blending. But this is actually on top, just the saturated and lessly exposed version of the online photo that we dragged. It also has a little bit of a liquefy effect on the edges here, just to add in some texture and some distortion based on the comp around. But to put it plainly, this one's very saturated and you're obviously going to want to play with your values, but you can see here I have it on 130 saturation. My exposure's on -0.5 and literally my highlights are turned down and everything so that when we actually overlay blend mode this in, it is giving the desired effect that I want with its tattoos, with his features, with the belt and everything. And this is something you're going to want to use case by case to sort of fine tune it, but this is essentially the stack. And this background layer, I believe, just has a color overlay with a black on top of it, just so we can get a little bit more depth when it's in the scene. As you can see, the start of this comp is actually at a different time than the start of the full edit. This is because the actual cut was a lot more educated to start when we were leaving the previous shot with a lot of left to right motion. So obviously we leave that shot with a lot of left to right motion and we cut going left to right. Now this comp sort of starts right here, but we decide that later. just if you were a little bit confused about the difference. Now, what we are going to do now is we're going to break down the comp from bottom to top. So it's actually not that complicated. We have a black solid in the background, and then we have our dust moving particle layers, right? This is any sort of overlay that you could have, gathered in your stock library. Next, we are building a little section with literal solids, to be honest. They just have a CC radial fast blur on some of them, which is a directional blur based on the point value of the center. And essentially we're just using masks here to sort of create these sections here, and it's sort of just creatively making these sections that will be for things like the outline version of the text, which is saying the talent's nickname, which is the tribal chief, and that's going on the background of where the talent is supposed to go. It's going to give it a lot of texture. Now on the left side we have the comps for the text, which we will get into later. You just hold off on that, but we are duplicating it multiple times with an overlay blend mode, as you can see, which is going to give us a lot more of a bright effect as we add in more. As you can see, when it's less, just go 2 less, you can see it's not really popping, but we add in 2 more with that overlay blend mode, and it's really giving us a nice glow. Now at the top right corner, we have some of the gambling icons coming in. We just have these gambling icons coming in. They have the same overlay blend mode. These ones have a little bit less opacity. And again, we're just building the area. Now you can sort of see where we're going to put the name and the athlete. This is probably the best section right here on the right. Now you can see we're going to add in boom, 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 and we'll go to a better section right here. And that's where the athlete is coming in, right? Oop, I didn't want to show that yet. Now, well, we'll just turn it back on because this is where the actual nickname nickname will go for any of the athletes. This is quite literally the text stack. It just has a very simple block dissolve, which is on like all of these layers as well. You don't really have to keep much mind to that because it kind of doesn't happen where we take it from the edit, so it's not that important as the things that we'll be talking about. But as you can see, what is important is it has an overlay blend mode. Now, the next things and the final things that will be happening at the top of this comp are some adjustments to the actual belt, bringing out a lot more blue of that belt with some solids that are parented, as you can see, parent and link to the talents, so it moves with the talents. That's how you do that. It's called a pick whip. And then this is another adjustment that I honestly don't know what it is. It's probably so small. And then this is the red of the belt, so you can see the before and after of the belt is pretty drastic. That's before and that's after. It's just those little tiny things with sports graphics will take you a long way. It's just giving you that pop that they're looking for. Now this next layer is that block dissolve solid over top the talent, so it's giving us a little bit more depth, grounding him in the scene, putting those blues on his skin tones. And this is just another version of that with the cyan color, so it's giving us a little bit more of a gradation feeling. And that's pretty much it from bottom to top. That's the text design, that's the athlete design. Those are the little tricks that are the most important things that are happening in this comp. It's probably important to mention as well, we're using that CC fast blur, that CC radial fast blur on most of the transitions you'll see. And it's just a really powerful effect because when we make that transition into the next talent frame, we are going from right justified to left justified. And as you can see at the point of contact of cut, we are making an extreme CC fast blur effect. Now the CC fast blur effect is really nice because you can really control it to be really, really blurry or just a slight bit blurred. But it is really good for connecting some shots. As you can see right here, we are going to talk about the text now. We are going to be talking about how we do this text, and I'm not going to go ahead and talk about everything I talked about with the building of the solo frame. With this one, I will talk about what we left out, which is the actual text design, how we spell out the names. And you're probably going to be surprised. You're going to be like, oh, that's pretty easy. As you can see, this is the exact same design. It's just on the right justified and the colors are all just different. So the only thing that we didn't go into was the actual text pre-comp. So let's just go ahead and open this up. As you can see, we have it in white here, and each layer is literally a letter that can be individualized. So we have the B here, the R, the O, the C, the K, the L, the E, the S, the N, the A, and the R. So yes, this is custom spelled out. This is not an actual font. And the fun thing about this is when you press play, they actually move. So they actually have a little bit of a stop motion effect. So we basically have we just have a couple states of each of the letters, and all they're doing is just cycling through those states. That's really all that's happening. You just have a B. Imagine you had a paintbrush and you just drew the B like 3 different times. You just painted the B 3 different times. You took an image scan of that B, and then you just basically looped it, and it's going to give you that jitter effect. Then you spell out how you want to design the name. So obviously each of these have a little bit of a scale adjustment. You see how all the scales are different? Because like sometimes you want to like build it out a little bit differently, right? Like the R and the B are clearly 44 scale and 67 scale. So it's just because I wanted to sort of design it this way. But truth be told, this is a pack that I did not create. So these looping letter animations can be found. A lot of different artists make them. I do this custom a lot of the time. This was on a 2.5 week timeline to do this whole promo. So this was not something that I made custom, but it's actually really easy to do. And if you guys want me to walk through how to do it on Photoshop, you can literally do this on Photoshop. So make sure to drop that in the comments if you're interested in learning about how to actually do this. But it's pretty much what I just said. All right, now let's hop back into the comp. As you've heard me say many times before, the special sauce is adding in the overlay blend mode and duplicating it on top of each other. Now, all of the colors that we were building in the background come out when you do the overlay blend mode, right? So you're like building the background and then all the colors can come out. Overlay blend mode doesn't work when nothing else is going on in the scene, right? Okay, let's get that very clear. So this is a very situational effect. I just wanted to make that clear. Alrighty, now that we talked about the talents, we are going to be talking about the transitional 3D text that you see here in a last standing match. Now this text was made in Cinema 4D. As you can see, it's on transparent alpha. I mean, maybe you don't see, but we're going to walk through exactly how we did this in Cinema 4D. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Now, as you can see, the setup is actually really simple. Let me just come out of my camera view here. As you can see, it's a very simple scene. Now, everything in the background is going to be on alpha, but we do have our reflections feeding through on the dome light. We have a spotlight up here that literally just has a target tag that's on the actual last man standing text. And the last man standing text is literally just text splines with an extrude object. Now, we used to have a bulge effect on it, but got taken away. Didn't like how it looked. So as you can see, it's literally just this extrude object on 50 centimeters. And I believe we don't even have a cap on it, but it's just this text spline with this vertical spacing at negative 25 centimeters to have it a little bit tighter. And then it just says last man standing match. And obviously we have on the before shoots, and they are on the exact same setup. On the camera, we're also animating the depth of field to make sure the focus is as sharp as possible as these things are happening. It's a very short amount of time, so they're very specific amounts of keyframes that are specific for this scene. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it flies through with 2 letters, and on the second letter, the A, it actually goes through the hole in the A, and that essentially is going to take us to the next scene. And we're basically just going to do an After Effects a little wipe transition with a mask, and it's going to be really easy to just bring us into the next scene going through that hole with the camera. Now in 3D, like, it's very easy to do these things because it doesn't have to be exact. It can kind of just fit seemingly. So as you can see, this is basically the setup, and when you go to export, you're going to want to make sure for alpha, make sure you have alpha channel selected when you're exporting your PNG, and then that's basically it. So let's hop back into After Effects to see how we transition this into the side-by-side matchup comp. All right, we are in After Effects with the animation exported into the composition. As you can see, we have the alpha channel here, and we are ready to cook. Now, I wish I did a little bit more variations for this, but it was on a time crunch. This is the reflections. If you see the reflections of the actual scene that we'll get into in the other videos, this metal is just sort of reflecting all of those reflections in the scene from that HDRI. In the main comp, we actually have it stacked up where we have two of those pre-comps, one on top with a CC radial fast blur. As we talked about, we use it a lot. And then we just have some adjustment boosts with lumetri. I believe we have a sharpen effect on it and a saturation in the creative tab. And we also have a brightness and contrast node on it. This is just because it was feeling a little bit more dull and we were just bringing up the vibes of the pop because it was more of a lens flare type of typography effect, if anything. It sort of pops on screen. So it can't be dull, poopy. It has to be bright and flashy. So as you can see, we have the two layers here, but then this third layer gets introduced right here, basically to create this blue section, right? So as you remember, the Roman Reigns is over here and Brock Lesnar is over here. So we have this blue section over here. This is essentially being done through the lumetri color. We have an extreme temperature gauge here that's just basically making this super cooled down. Now, if you remember the actual scene that we're in, we have blue on the right side and we have this orange goldish on the left side. So clearly we're going to want a little bit of that contrast. In terms of the actual scene that's behind the 3D text, it's pretty simple and it's literally exactly what we already talked about with the individual talent comp. We have the exact same treatment of the athlete photos, but something interesting to note is we have this effect called CC Snowfall here. This is adding a little bit of depth here. We also have a wiggle position on the actual comp. That's adding in a little bit of that shake, as you can see. So you see that shake right there. That's coming from the wiggle position. As you can see, this keyframes right here with a little bit of that scale. These are responding to the comp before it. So obviously as it transitions, it has a little bit of that shake, right? So that's where that's coming from. And that's the reason for that little bit of shake, right? As you can see, we also have that little black and white fade up into color. That's giving us our extra pop. And then we have that block dissolve at the end, which is very, very unnoticeable in the main edit. Now, when we go into this actual comp, we can break down the actual colors. We have that black fill and the block dissolve blues on the right side, obviously masked up, so it's only on left and right side. And then right here, we have this big VS, which is basically just the same text that we have on the other stuff, but it's just the letters VS. And obviously, as you can see, it's moving. It's the same sort of setup that we explained with the text of the athletes. Now, these all have a CC radio fast blur, so it's just giving us a sort of background effect. It might be distorting on low quality right now, but that's all right. Then the next things to add on top of that are literally the athlete comps. And we have the dust particle comp on top of that. And then that's our basic backplate. The subtle animation will match up to what's going on in the main edit. And we look at it back in the main edit, and it turns out it wasn't that complicated at the end of the day. Now, the last thing that we probably want to cover is this transition of last man standing match. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's just implied direction. It's honestly a pretty dirty transition, and I did it pretty fast. We're essentially just pulling down with all those block dissolves and with all those mass effects, and the camera is sort of tilting up in this next scene that it sort of works. Now, in the next part of this series, we will be getting into this scene. This is the ending scene right here. But for now, we're only going to mention the camera move of it sort of reacting there as a secondary action animation principle. All that's happening here is just that CC radio fast blur, and it's pulling down, which is that animation of the camera moving up across the text at the end, which we saw in the Cinema 4D file earlier. Now, if you want to see this scene, stay tuned and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Upgrading your sports graphics is really easy. All you have to do is lock in, subscribe, stay tuned to the shot breakdowns. You know what it is. You got to make that YouTube playlist, man. I hope you took notes here because these small little tricks will elevate your work. If you just remember what the actual image looked like before from what we got online to what it looks like here, these things will elevate your look. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. So like I said, if you're bursting with motion, go ahead and check out motiondirective.com/shop. Represent the motion army, the motion maniacs, and it also supports the studio directly. Stay tuned for part 3 where we walk through the ending shot and the ending sequence. I appreciate every single one of you that watched this video to the end, so much more than you ever realize. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.